Hello, and welcome to Unfilter That Lens, the podcast where we deal with the raw, the real, the authentic, and sometimes messy side of mental health. Every once in a while, we also get the most amazing testimonies and stories that come across our desk. And that's why it is with so much excitement that I introduce the guest speaker for this episode, Dr. Eyal Levit. Dr. Levit is not only an internationally renowned dermatologist living and working in New York, but he's also a published author and, quite frankly, a genuinely inspirational human being. Now, The King's Race was written more than 10 years ago and was initially meant to help young kids discover how to live life with compassion, resilience, and inspiration. However, this ostensibly simple story is so delicately layered that we believe it has lessons for us all. So please sit back, relax, and journey with us as we explore the intricately woven story of The King's Race. I don't want to keep you too long today because I know that you have a very busy schedule.
Yes.
Okay. That's great. I wanted to just start off by hearing a bit more about you, about your story. I mean, I know you're a dermatologist, but I've kind of been wondering, how long have you been in New York? When did you start? Like, what is your sort of background story into how you came to be where you are today?
Well, it's a very long story and depends where you want to start. But in terms of my personal travels, in a few sentences, I was born in Ukraine at the age of 8 months old. My family immigrated to Israel. We lived in Africa and mostly in Nigeria, but Ivory Coast, Kenya, for about 7 years on and off. My family was sent by the Israeli government to do humanitarian care in those countries. My mom was a physician treating malaria. My dad building roads and bridges. He was a project manager of a large corporation. They were trying to build a trans-African highway from the east to the west. And because of a lot of coups and changes in the governments, it never panned out, but they were attempting that. In between, we would travel to Israel back and forth during the summers, visiting other countries on the way. Since there were never direct flights, since those countries were part of the OPEC, and it was kind of under the radar, the fact that they were helping them with
Right.
different projects. And then my family moved to the United States when they didn't really find opportunity to work after the big projects that my dad was in charge of. Coming back to Israel, he found that he was given a desk job. It wasn't really his dream, and I remained with my grandparents. Eventually, there was a situation where I was lost in the desert, and I realized when there were no phones back then, no cell phones. It was 1985, and I realized that the stress that would have happened to my grandparents if anything happened to me, if I would go to the army and being alone, responsibility for them. And so I decided to join my parents in the United States. That was 2 years after. And I joined them and realized that I have to make up and do something back in return to the land and to the country and to the people that have given me my identity to Israel. And this probably was one of the things that pushed me to excel and to be a good ambassador. And so I skipped 2 years in school, one in high school and one in college. And then my parents told me, no, take medical school a little easier. Don't do it in 3 years, because I wanted to skip some time there too. And that's it. And then I did that. And ever since, that's what I'm doing, trying just to utilize good and kindness to in anything and everything that I do to make the world a more welcoming and more happy, healthier place.
Yeah. That's amazing. And the story of your parents, and I can see how that plays out in your life and wanting to give back with all the work that they've done in the past through the years. I can really see how that sort of molded you and shaped you into wanting to give back as well, and into service. I mean, service is to serve others is, I feel, one of the greatest gifts that we have. So I love that we have you on our podcast, because part of what we do is trying to give back to those who are suffering mentally, with mental health. And I think having someone like you who has written this incredible book that, listen, my husband and I have both read it. We lay in bed together reading the book and absolutely loved it. And it was such a joy to read. And we were actually reading it separately because I read much faster than he does. um, so he would go,
My
what
wife
chapter are you on
also.
now? And I would say, I'm on chapter whatever, and he'd go, okay, I'm nearly there. So we had a really great time reading the book together, and then sort of discussing it, and listening to one another's opinions of the book. So uh, even though it's a children's book, um, it really made us think. Do you know what I mean? It really connected us with it. The book really connects with us as the reader of it. What actually inspired you to? I mean, you're a dermatologist. I know you've written a book. I think it's called A Lost Art, Reflections of a Dermatologist. I saw that there was that book, and I thought, wow, this is such a depart from that, um, to writing a children's book. So please tell us a little bit about how that came about. How you inspired to write this book?
It's really a very simple um, inspiration was my son. I was asked to read in his kindergarten a book for the children. Every parent had the opportunity to do that, and I said, of course, I will do that. And I made a window in my schedule. I told my staff, please block this time out. I'm going to be going to his kindergarten, to his school, and reading a book. And then, being always busy, I didn't check which book I'll read. And I went the evening before, to his room and started perusing through the books, and nothing really spoke to me like the books that my mom read to me. And I'm like, I can't read to them just anything. I have to read to them something. And it's like, you know what? I'm just going to write something for them, something that I think will speak to them, to the school that he's in. And he's in a um, religious Jewish school at that time. And I figured, let me try and do something that would represent the values and message that they would grow into, a message that many outside may not be able to appreciate perhaps as much. But the fact that they would have to explain themselves to others why they're going to school like that, why are they reading a book that some people would say is outdated, why are they, the entire, if you look at Nietzsche's saying, God is dead, we killed him, and his concern about that. Can we handle a vacuum where there is no rule of God? And can we really be the Superman without God? Can we be our own directors? And we saw what happened with that: World War One, World War Two, and so on. The idea would be to tell them that they have independence, and the fact that they have laws, they have more freedom than when you don't have an organized schedule. So you have an organized schedule. Within that framework, you have freedom. And that's something that took me a very long time to appreciate and to realize. So to try and bring that to them within a story, because if you try to teach, there is a wonderful statement by Aristotle, who said that there are three ways that people judge you when you're trying to explain anything to them. There is the your trustworthiness, your reasoning, and the emotion, right? So it's the logos, the ethos, and the pathos, and it's most important to actually go through the emotional part, because you can reason as much as you want, as we can see in today's world. Um, you're shocked, but the people don't follow reason. But a story
Mm.
speaks volumes. And so this was the
Mm.
way to go. And I'm sorry, I'm going so philosophical on you, but again, we're
Don't
we're
worry.
talking among adults here, as opposed to speaking to children. And the
Sure.
overarching plan has to be clear. And so, uh, uh, borrowing on my life in Nigeria, where I was the only kid in school, and where I was having it was called Park Avenue, where we used to live. We had the
Wow.
ranch home, and there were a lot of animals around there. We had to, as part of the people who came over there, we had to give work for the locals, and so we had to hire a chef, a housekeeper, a driver, etc.
Mm.
So,
Mm.
nobody would think that we're taking jobs. That was the agreement that the
Sure.
companies had with the local government. And I remember running among the sheep and making, trying to copy their sounds and doing or doing all the sound.
That's
So
brilliant.
so making those sounds over there and adding them into the story framework was a pleasure. And when I came over to the kids and then I was reading to them and making the sounds, their eyes opened, they laughed, and it told me that I have to finish the book. I was reading to them everything I could. I stayed up all night. I wrote the book, and at around like 6 o'clock in the morning, I was like, all right, I'm ready. Let me go to see them all hyped up. And as I said, when I read to them and I saw the response, I realized that I have to complete the story. And then I completed it, but it was just stuck there and I was disappointed because I thought the story needs to be told. And this was written about 10 years ago. And then
Wow.
after being part of a group of physicians and other healthcare specialists in a book called Healthy for Life, where I was asked to be the dermatologist, writing one of the chapters on healthy living. I had the opportunity to meet with Brave Book publishers, and then I said, well, why don't I talk to them? They perhaps know how to go there, because I don't really know how to publish. Like, I treat people. That's
Sure.
what I do. And
Yes.
they helped me along. And between them and Karen and Paul, they opened really doors for me. And it's really proves the
Mm.
point that it's not what you know, but unfortunately who you know. And that's what helped me come along and get this book out the way it is now.
That's amazing. And did your son also love like when you actually read the book? I know everyone, the kids were laughing, but how did your son react? What was his reaction to the book?
The same like the rest of them. As a matter of fact, when I read to him the book years later, he asked, "Pop, can you read to me, please, again?" So he wanted to hear the book a second time. But the interesting thing is, I was reading it to him in bed, and I didn't find that he was asking me the questions. Perhaps he was just listening to them, but I could see many of the ideas uh, led him to think and perhaps even act in accordance to some of the messages that were there without him even realizing it. So I would have loved it to be more a discussion, which would have happened if this book was dissected and analyzed perhaps in school, as opposed to simply reading in bed when you're already tired. You're getting just the magical experience, but you're not
Mm.
thinking about how would I be in his shoes or in the
Mm.
father's shoes. or what could I have done better, or why did he decide that he wanted to disappear, and why did he decide that after his ability or the challenge, why did the challenge make him revel in it and become,
Mm.
kind of like baptized into a
Yes.
person
Yes.
different person. I
So
say, you see, to me too, it is like a person, even though it's an animal, right?
I also related to the animals as a person, actually. So I totally agree with that. My favorite part of the book, and I think it speaks to me on a level that is a very personal one, and without giving too much away to our listeners, because I do want them to go and read the book. My favorite part in the book is where Tony is now stuck in that big group of wolves, and Spots comes and decides to help him, and um, when the sheep says, why are you helping him, like he did the worst things to you, like how can you possibly help him? And yet Spots helps him still and repairs those terrible things that were done to him with kindness and grace and compassion. And that for me spoke very loudly, especially coming from South Africa, coming from the country that I come from. And I think that when I read that, I was like, wow, this book needs to be read all over the world. Like it needs to go, because I know for a large part my kids growing up in South Africa are very resilient. They were honestly the most resilient kids. And when I was reading this, I thought, actually, even my kids at the ages of 19 and 22, I want to read this book with them, because there are so many subtle layers and there are so many messages that can be given. And I almost felt like it it's not just for primary school. Like I feel like it needs to be dissected in high school, and things need to be discussed, and possibly even at university level, because I think you've written it in such an incredible way that it does kind of, it works your mind. Like you're constantly going, oh, ooh, oh, yes, ooh. There were a number of times where I said to my husband, are you on this chapter yet? And he'd say, no, 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 not yet. Wait, wait, wait. And then we discuss the chapter, and I'm like, there's so many subtleties here, and so many layers, and so many underlying things. So it's so powerful for me that part of the book where Spots just, I mean, he experienced so much bullying and exclusion and discrimination, and yet he just keeps showing up. And I wondered for you, I mean, us being in the mental health industry, I wondered for you, how does that, how do you think this story could support children with mental health? I mean, I know it's a story about adversity, but I'm just thinking from a mental health point of view and your experience with your son, how do you think it could really help children and parents in the mental health kind of way?
First of all, thank you. I agree with you, and I'm really happily surprised that you gave that book the needed time and respect, because I did write it with many layers, and I was hoping people would really allow themselves to appreciate that, and not think that, oh, we're just reading into it. He didn't really mean it. And it's, even if that did happen, it's beyond the point. You are given the book, so you get to enjoy and dissect and analyze it the way you want it. But to answer your question, the book appeared as short chapters in a newspaper in Brooklyn. It was read in other uh, counties as well, but it was appearing in Brooklyn, where it was half in English, half in Russian. A- And
Wow.
um, and I had a patient that came to me. She was 16, uh,
Wow.
with her mother, and her father, a really very loving father. She was their only child, older child. Her brother died from a suicide. He committed suicide, and
I'm so sorry.
the father. yes, and then they thought they cannot have another child, and she was born late in their relationship. And they were obviously babying her, protecting her, which has a lot of layers of, you understand, psychological and pressure, etc. And uh, then the father, who loved her so much, ended up getting sick, suffering. Doctors didn't believe that he really suffered. He had severe chronic pain,
Right.
polymyalgia rheumatica. And then he ended up, sorry, one second.
No problem.
My the Bible book fell from a shelf. I had to pick it up and
That's fine.
give it a kiss. Forgive me. And he and he died. And she was at extreme depression. I obviously came to
Mm.
them, visited them, because I knew the father and I knew the family. And after the book appeared in chapters, she came to me with her mother, crying, and wanted to give me a hug because she said I was lost. I was starting to, I was overeating. I felt in school I did not find myself. I gained so much weight I did not recognize myself. And the book gave me back a direction. And honestly, as I think about it, I'm having tears in my eyes because uh, this is the goal of the book. The goal of the book is to show love and to show direction and give resilience, like you said, just showing up and saying, you know what others think is your weakness is actually your strength, because to understand someone who is in trouble, you can't understand them if you never experience anything of that nature yourself. And to be able to help people, you would be able to help them best if you feel for them. To understand someone who goes through an addiction, you have to relate to that and perhaps have your own addiction. I had a lady I did a surgery yesterday on, and she has a problem. She loves to smoke. She doesn't have alcohol problem, but she loves to smoke. And I said to her, you know what? I understand how difficult it is. I have an addiction with chocolate. I love sweets. I know it's not very healthy, but
Me too.
it's kind of like this the same idea. But you need to do it for your overall health, not even for yourself, but perhaps for your children, for the rest of your family.
Mm.
So how the book uh, helps people with mental disabilities, I think a mental disability is something that is judged by us based on our laws of what is disability. And I think that in the right hands, with the right direction, of course, we have degrees of disabilities, but that disability can be empowering both to the person who has them and to the rest of his family. I've seen families really change and become um, better people. And so I think that it's hard to understand or believe that, but I don't think there are coincidences. And they say God only tries those who can handle it, and it's painful to say that because some of the things that I see are so painful. But if you
Mm.
can make from adversity strength, from darkness make light, then you have really made your purpose in life in this world. Uh, you've succeeded.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And I mean, our own family story is one of resilience after horrific incidents happened to one of our daughters, and she ended up with addiction and substance abuse and self-harm and anxiety and depression, anorexia, fibromyalgia. She's got a number of autoimmune diseases, and this year she is 4 years clean of all of that. She has survived suicide, she has survived suicidal ideation, she has survived anxiety, she has survived self-harm, she has fought her way back from the brink. And
I fully believe in the work that you're doing with this book, especially, and I think that if people do give it the time and they do give it the attention, they will find resilience and inspiration in this book. And I know when I read it, the thought that ran through my head, I thought, where was this book when my little girl was 14? Where was this book? And it just made me realize how exceptional and how needed this book is.
Right, let's take a breath and reflect for a moment on what we have heard from the good doctor. I hope you've enjoyed this first episode, and please join us for our second and concluding episode with Dr. Eyal Levit. We look forward to having you along for the ride.